I collapsed in front of her, and she stepped over me like I was a spilled drink at a party. My knees had buckled first, sharp pain in my chest, blurred vision, and the world spinning like a roulette wheel. People screamed, some gasped. But not Sophia. No, she just looked at me with that cold, unreadable face she always wore when things no longer interested her. Then she turned and walked away. Not a flicker of panic, not even a backward glance. The sound of her heels fading into the hallway was the last thing I heard before darkness swallowed me whole. When I woke up, 2 days had passed. The hospital ceiling above me was a washed-out beige, and the IV in my arm beeped steadily like a metronome. I tried to sit up. Bad idea. The pain hit instantly, a tight grip around my ribs, as if my heart still hadn't forgiven me for surviving. Ryan sat in the chair beside me, arms crossed, face pale with tension. "Welcome back, idiot," he muttered, not looking at me. "You almost died, and she left before the ambulance arrived." My throat was dry. "She saw me?" He finally turned to face me. "She watched you fall, John. Stared like she was waiting to see if you'd bleed, and when you didn't, she rolled her eyes and walked off. Security footage confirms it. We pulled it before anyone else could." A single tired breath left my lungs. I stared down at my fingers, bare. "She took the ring?" Ryan didn't answer. He didn't have to. I felt it. Sophia had been mine for almost 2 years. Or at least, I had been hers. The world saw us as a power couple, flawless, fashionable, unbreakable. But they never saw what happened in the silences. The way her voice stayed sweet when cameras were on, but turned surgical in private. How her touches became less frequent. How she flinched every time I brought up the future. They never saw the moment she decided I had outlived my usefulness. She posted a reel at IA. An hour later, Ryan said bitterly. At a rooftop bar, holding a glass of champagne, the caption said, "Finally free." I didn't respond. I couldn't, because everything in me wanted to scream, to rage, to tear out the IVs and walk straight to her front door. But I didn't. Instead, I waited, healed, trained in silence, and remembered. On day 12, when my heart stopped skipping and started beating again like it belonged to me, I got a message. From Deborah. "I heard what happened. I hope you're okay." That was it. No emojis, no pity, no nonsense, just real concern. Deborah. Sophia's younger sister. Always a shadow in the room when Sophia shined, always the quiet one. I remembered how she once gave up her seat for me during a family dinner when no one else noticed I hadn't eaten. How she brought a jacket to a gala because she had a feeling it would get cold. I had no idea what that message meant, but I didn't delete it. Weeks passed. I stayed off the grid, blocked Sophia, blocked her agent, blocked the wedding planner she hired for a ceremony I never knew was scheduled, hers and some influencers. Instead, I focused on one thing, standing up, properly, on my own. The first day I walked unaided, I didn't tell anyone, but I went home, not to our old place. I left that penthouse untouched, just like the memories inside it. I went to the small villa I bought when I was 23. It smelled like dust and old ambition. Perfect. That night, I stood by the window, phone in hand, and opened Deborah's message again. My thumb hovered, then I replied. "Still healing. But thank you. That meant more than I can explain." Seconds later, she responded. "I never believed she deserved you. I just didn't think you'd ever see it." "I do now," I typed, then paused, deleted. "Would you like to grab coffee sometime, just to talk?" Yes. 3 letters, 1 answer, the first moment that didn't hurt in months. The next morning, the headlines came in. Sophia's wedding had been announced, venue booked, guest list confirmed, honeymoon destinations leaked. And for the first time in 2 years, my hand didn't shake when I held my phone. Let her marry whoever she wants, let her post her curated love story, let the world cheer. She had walked away when I collapsed. Now she could watch me stand beside her sister. I've always believed people reveal their truest selves in 3 places, when they win, when they lose, and when no one is watching. Sophia Liu was stunning in all 3. She won beautifully, she lost cruelly, and when she thought no one was watching, she stopped pretending she ever loved me. We met 5 years ago at a conference hosted by a pharmaceutical tech startup. I was one of the keynote speakers, invited as a late substitute for someone who'd dropped out at the last minute. Sophia wasn't on the guest list, she wasn't even supposed to be in the building. She came with a friend, managed to talk her way in, and ended up standing at the back of the hall in a red blazer she borrowed from someone taller than her. I saw her before I went on stage, she saw me before I spoke a single word. After the talk, she approached me like a gust of wind, graceful, rehearsed, and intentional. "I'm Sophia," she said, offering her hand and a flawless smile, "and I think you need a better press team." She was bold, I was intrigued. Our conversation started with work, moved to dreams, slipped into flirtation, and before I realized what was happening, I was inviting her to dinners, introducing her to my friends, defending her sharp tongue to my mother, and making space in my calendar for things I never thought I'd care about: flower launches, wine tastings, brand events. By our third month together, she had already set the tone of the relationship. I chased, she approved, I offered, she accepted, I loved it, she tolerated it. But I didn't see it then. Or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to admit that I was addicted to the way she made me feel, needed, chosen, worthy of her orbit. I was John. Firstborn of the Qureshi family legacy. Heir to a line of cold business tacticians and silver spoon expectations. The kind of man who was raised to lead, to provide, to build empires. My father handed me my first private stock portfolio at age 15 and told me failure wasn't in our blood. I succeeded, over and over again, in school, in business, in boardrooms full of men twice my age. I wasn't used to being outmatched. Sophia didn't outmatch me in numbers, she outmatched me in emotional currency. She could make me feel like the most important man in the room with a glance, and completely invisible the moment I was no longer useful. Still, I proposed to her after 1 year. Not because I thought she was perfect, but because I was tired of negotiating my value everywhere else. With her, I thought, I didn't have to be impressive, I just had to be present. She said yes, but she wore the ring like it was borrowed, pretty, temporary, not meant to last. We never married. Somewhere between the engagement and the altar, she became busy, with projects, appearances, sponsorships. She said she wanted to build something for herself before becoming someone's wife. I told her I respected that, and I did. Until the day I collapsed at a quarterly strategy meeting and she stepped around my body like I was an inconvenience. That was the real proposal, the real vow. One she made silently by walking away when I needed her most. And that was the moment I stopped being hers. But this isn't just about me and Sophia, this is about Deborah. Deborah Liu was Sophia's younger sister by 3 years, same sharp chin, same almond eyes. But where Sophia moved like a spotlight, Deborah existed like a hush. She dressed in soft tones, she listened more than she spoke, she kept her opinions to herself unless asked directly. And even then, her responses felt like handwritten letters, careful, personal, impossible to ignore. For the first 2 years I dated Sophia, Deborah barely said 10 sentences to me. And yet, somehow, those 10 sentences stayed in my mind longer than any of Sophia's rehearsed declarations of love. One in particular. It was during Sophia's birthday dinner. Everyone was drinking, bowing, and showing off. I had excused myself to the balcony for air. Deborah followed quietly, holding a plate of untouched appetizers. "You look exhausted," she said. I smiled. "Birthday chaos." She nodded, then added, "No, not from tonight. You look like someone who's been exhausted for months and no one's noticed." It was the first time anyone had. She offered no solutions, just sat beside me, placed the plate between us, and let the silence settle like dust. I never forgot that night, and I never let myself think too hard about what it meant, because I was engaged, and Deborah was family, and I still believed Sophia would come through. Now, lying in that hospital bed weeks after Sophia's cold betrayal, her sister was the only one who reached out with concern. That irony wasn't lost on me. I met Deborah for coffee 1 week after I was discharged. She wore a plain grey coat, no makeup, and a small smile that didn't ask anything of me. She didn't press for details, didn't ask how I was holding up, didn't reference Sophia once. She let me set the pace. I told her everything, and she listened like a priest, non-judgmental, attentive, patient. That's the day the switch flipped. Sophia had always demanded devotion. Deborah received it by accident. I started seeing her more often. always under the pretense of updates or errands or running into her by coincidence. But it wasn't a coincidence. I was drawn to her. The quiet gravity of her presence calmed something that Sophia had long trampled on, my sense of self. And then, the day the wedding announcement dropped, something in me snapped into clarity. I was going to stand up, not just physically, emotionally, publicly. And when I did, when I showed the world I was whole again, it wouldn't be beside Sophia. It would be beside the sister who saw me, and the woman who never walked away. The morning the wedding invitation arrived, I didn't even know she had set a date. It came in a white velvet envelope, delivered not to my house, but to my office. The receptionist looked at me like she was bracing for impact when she handed it over. I didn't flinch, not until I opened it. You are cordially invited to the union of Sophia Liu and Nathan Kwan. The date, exactly 6 weeks after the day I had collapsed in front of her. The venue, the same garden hall I had reserved for our wedding 2 years ago. The RSVP? Addressed to Mr. John Qureshi, former fiancé. It wasn't just a wedding announcement, it was a message, a strike, an execution. Ryan slammed the invitation onto my desk. You seeing this? I'm reading it, I replied, evenly. She's marrying a man she met 2 months ago. No, she's marrying a man she met at the gala I collapsed at. Remember him? The one she said was just some TikTok brat with crypto money? Ryan swore under his breath. She's using your contacts. The designer for that venue still lists you as the last client. I said nothing, I just leaned back in my chair and watched the ceiling. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel anything. Not rage, not betrayal, just strategy. Because she didn't expect me to get back up. She expected me to mourn her, to vanish, to let her rewrite the story. But I hadn't been healing all this time for peace. I had been healing for war. The next time I saw Deborah, I handed her the invitation. Her face tightened. She sent this to your office? I nodded. She wants me to see it. She wants me to show up, broken. Deborah looked up slowly. Her voice was soft but sharp. What are you going to do? I'm going to show up, standing. She blinked. Alone? No. I met her gaze. With you. Her breath caught, just for a second. Are you sure? Dead sure. It wasn't about revenge, not entirely. It was about memory, about truth, about showing her that I wasn't the ghost she thought she'd buried. The plan came together faster than I expected. Ryan handled the logistics, Deborah handled the silence, being by my side, but never pressuring, never asking what I wanted her to be. She was just there. And that was enough. Until the first fracture appeared. We were sitting at a small restaurant downtown, one of those quiet places with dim lights and too many wine bottles on the wall. Deborah had barely touched her food. I noticed. You okay? I asked. She hesitated. I don't want to be part of a show, John. I put down my fork. You think that's what this is? I think it's what Sophia wants it to be. She'll spin this however she wants. I sighed. So what? Let her? I'm not doing this to hurt her. I'm doing this to reclaim what she tried to erase. She looked at me for a long moment. And me? What about you? If I walk in with you, what am I, John? Am I your date, your statement? Or just the woman you're using to prove a point? The question hit deeper than it should have, because I hadn't asked myself that, not properly, and I realized then, in all my planning, I hadn't considered how this would feel for her. She was Sophia's sister. This wedding wasn't just a public insult to me, it was a betrayal of Deborah too. I'm sorry, I said finally. I didn't mean to make you feel like a pawn. She nodded, but something changed in her eyes. A retreat. The next few days were tense, not in fights, in space. She didn't text first, didn't linger in calls, and every time I saw her, she seemed slightly more distant. Meanwhile, Sophia's wedding announcements flooded every screen, sponsored posts, branded content, behind-the-scenes reels of dress fittings. And then came the bomb. An interview. With Sophia. Headline, From Breakdown to Breakthrough, How I Rebuilt My Life After My Ex's Collapse. In the clip, she sat in a velvet chair, hands folded. Her voice is soft, her smile calculated. I think people go through things, you know, but some wounds are emotional. When you're with someone who struggles mentally, sometimes you just have to choose yourself. Not a single word about what actually happened. No mention of how she walked away while I gasped for breath. She'd rewritten the whole narrative. I wasn't the one left on the floor. I was now the unstable man who dragged her down. Deborah watched the video silently beside me. Then I got up. "Where are you going?" I asked. "I need air," she said, grabbing her coat. I followed her to the rooftop. The city lights below us flickered like dying stars. "She lied," I said. Deborah didn't look at me. Of course she did. She's turning me into the villain. She always does that when she's scared. I looked at her. Scared of what? She finally met my eyes. Scared that people might finally love someone more than her. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then I asked the question that had been hanging between us since the night I first texted her. "Why didn't you ever tell me the truth about her?" Deborah turned back toward the edge of the rooftop. "Because I thought you already knew, and I didn't want to be the sister who sabotaged her sister's life." "You never did that," I said. "I am now," she whispered. "No," I corrected gently. "You're the only reason I remembered I had one." She looked down at her hands. "Then tell me, am I just a reason for your recovery, or am I part of what comes after it?" I didn't answer. I didn't know how. And that silence. That was the real beginning of the conflict, not between me and Sophia, but between who I used to be, and who I wanted to be now, with Deborah. Because revenge is easy, healing is hard, especially when it's tangled in the last person you're afraid to hurt. I didn't sleep the night before her wedding. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of the guest room I had chosen to crash in, far away from the city, the media, and her spotlight. I had my phone in one hand, Deborah's unread message in the other, and silence pressing on my chest, like the same weight that took me down months ago. It wasn't anxiety. I'd felt that before, sweaty palms, rapid breathing, the bone-deep tension of walking into hostile boardrooms or watching a deal hang by a single comma. This wasn't fear, this was something worse. This was grief with a pulse. A slow, rhythmic ache that started behind my ribs and echoed in my teeth, my fingertips, the soles of my feet. Because part of me still wanted her. And that was the most disgusting part. Even after everything, after the abandonment, the lies, the twisted narrative she sold to the world, there was a version of me still stuck in the past, still remembering the softness in her voice when no one else was around, still wondering if she ever once truly loved me. But I knew the truth. If she had, she never would have walked away. Not then, not like that. Yet somehow, the memory of her wasn't what haunted me the most. It was Deborah. And the look she gave me the last time we spoke. A mixture of longing and restraint. Of hope, crushed quietly beneath the weight of a question I never answered. Am I just a reason for your recovery, or am I part of what comes after it? I didn't know, not then, because standing beside Deborah didn't feel like revenge anymore. It felt like exposure. She saw through me, past the perfectly controlled face, past the calculated distance I kept from people. She saw the version of John that bled internally but never spoke a word of it, and she never demanded he fix himself. She just stayed. And now I wasn't sure I deserved her. I got up before sunrise, showered, dressed in silence, wore a charcoal black suit, not one of the ones Sophia helped pick out in our old days, but one I'd bought after the collapse. It didn't carry memories, only armor. By 10 a.m., the car was waiting outside. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time before stepping out. My eyes looked older, not in age, but in quiet damage. Ryan met me outside the venue. "Security's tight," he muttered. "Cameras everywhere, influencers are already posting reels." "Let them," I said. He handed me a small pin with our family crest. "Ma, put this on, you're not just an ex today, you're legacy." I pinned it onto my chest. It didn't feel like pride, it felt like closure. Inside the venue, everything was white and gold, the flowers, the lighting, the chairs, the filtered air smelled like vanilla and champagne, and behind all of it, the echo of a past life I didn't belong to anymore. I didn't see her right away. I saw Deborah first. She was standing to the side, in a pale blue dress, minimal makeup, hair tied back, but the moment our eyes met, the noise faded. She walked over slowly. "Are you ready?" she asked. "No," I said honestly, "but I'm here." And she smiled, not like Sophia smiled, for applause or effect, but softly, like someone who didn't expect me to be perfect, just present. The ceremony began minutes later. The lights dimmed, the music started. And then Sophia appeared. She was beautiful, as always, in a flawless ivory gown, diamonds at her ears, her smile graceful, detached, immaculate. The crowd stood as she walked down the aisle toward Nathan, her groom, but she wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me, direct, unapologetic, cold. A silent message passed between us. "You're here, you saw it, I won." And for a moment, the room blurred. I remembered our first apartment, her laugh echoing off the bare walls, her head on my shoulder, her voice, drunk on wine, whispering, "Don't ever leave first." But she did, and she wasn't sorry. As she reached the altar, the officiant began speaking. I wasn't listening, I was staring at Deborah's hands, folded quietly in her lap. I leaned in. Whispered, "Come with me." She looked at me, startled. "What? Now?" I stood. The room shifted, heads turned, cameras tilted. And I walked out. Not hurriedly, not with shame, just calmly, purposefully. Deborah followed. Outside, the air was sharper, real, not filtered. She caught up to me under the covered entrance. "What are you doing?" "Leaving," I said. "Why?" she whispered. "Why now?" I turned to her. Because I realized I don't need to prove anything to her anymore, not my strength, not my healing, and definitely not my ability to stand. She stared at me, waiting. And I said it. Finally. "I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this because I don't want to be the kind of man who lets one betrayal define the rest of his life." Her eyes softened. "And what about me?" I stepped closer. "You were never part of the revenge. You were the only real thing left in a world full of performance." Deborah's eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry, she just nodded slowly. Then she reached for my hand, and for the first time in months, my pulse felt steady. "I don't care who watches now," I said, "I just care who stays." We walked toward the car together, leaving behind cameras, curated vows, and a woman who only knew how to pose for love. And as the doors closed, I didn't feel victory. I felt something better. Peace. 3 days after Sophia's wedding, a video surfaced online. It wasn't a highlight reel, it wasn't a professional production for her content team. It was raw, handheld, blurry in places. But the audio was clear. Why would he bring her here? Sophia's voice, sharp, panicked, just minutes after I had walked out with Deborah. Then another voice, presumably a bridesmaid. "I thought you said he wouldn't even show." Sophia again. "He was supposed to be too broken. This was my closure, my final word. I wanted him to see what he lost. Not parade around with my sister like she was the one who won." The video was cut there, but that was all the world needed. Within hours, the clip went viral. @ Runaway X trended. People dissected every second, every breath. Influencers debated who was more in the wrong. Commentators speculated whether I had planned it all. Fans combed through old posts from Sophia and Deborah, searching for signs of rivalry. And Sophia's polished narrative, the careful victimhood she'd spun in interviews, began to crack. For the first time in her life, the world didn't believe her. She wasn't the one abandoned, she was the one exposed. The fallout came fast. Brand partnerships issued statements, sponsors quietly pulled campaigns, the magazine cover set for release that week, cancelled, but the real blow came privately, from her father. I received the email at midnight. Subject: "You may not care, but I still believe in fairness. Mr. Liu." Attached was a single document, a legal brief. At first glance, it looked like a business proposal. Upon closer inspection, it was a revocation. Sophia had been appointed a board seat in her family's investment firm. A symbolic gesture made just 2 weeks before the wedding. The document revoked it. Retroactively. The reason? breach of integrity, conduct unbecoming, and personal choices that have damaged the Liu family's reputation. Deborah was listed as the interim replacement. I didn't know how to feel. But Deborah, she didn't celebrate, she didn't post a thing, didn't gloat, didn't even tell me. I found out only after the story hit the finance blogs. I called her. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked. "I didn't want to," she said. "It doesn't feel like a win. It feels like a punishment, for all of us. She tried to ruin you. She tried to control the narrative. There's a difference." There was silence on the line, then she added, quieter. "I'm not proud of how this happened, John. No one wins when a family falls apart like this." I wanted to tell her it wasn't her fault, that she had done nothing wrong. But before I could speak, a knock came at my door. I opened it, half distracted, only to find Sophia standing there. Makeup-free, eyes hollow, hair pulled back in a messy bun. No entourage, no cameras, just her. And the first thing she said was, "You weren't supposed to do this to me." I didn't respond, just stepped aside. She entered like she owned the place, then paused halfway through the living room, unsure where to sit. Eventually, she chose the armrest of the couch. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," she said. "I swear, I needed control again. After everything. After you collapsed. After you pulled away from me." I stared at her. "You think I pulled away? You stepped over my body like I was a spilled drink." She winced. "It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I didn't know how to help you," she snapped suddenly. "You weren't speaking. You weren't you. I kept trying to fix it and nothing worked. Because I wasn't a project," I said quietly. "I was your partner, but the moment I became inconvenient, you turned me into a liability." She stood now, pacing. "And what? Deborah isn't? You think she understands you better than I did?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "She does, because she listens, because she stays, because she doesn't need to be the center of every damn scene." Sophia froze. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, softly, "You never looked at me the way you look at her." I blinked. "What? You think I didn't notice? Even when we were together, even before you proposed, the way you looked at Deborah, like she was a book you didn't want to close." I stepped back. "That's not fair." "It's the truth," she said bitterly. "Maybe I left you first, but you left me emotionally a long time ago. You just didn't know it." I opened my mouth, then closed it. Because somewhere, in the deepest corner of my conscience, a part of me knew she wasn't entirely wrong. Deborah had always been there, quietly orbiting, never demanding, never competing, just present. But I never let myself feel anything, not until Sophia proved she didn't deserve the place she held in my life. "You're right," I said. "I didn't know it then, but I know it now." She stared at me. No apology. No. Sophia turned toward the door, but paused before leaving. "Take care of her," she said, "because she's not as invincible as she pretends to be." And then she was gone. The room felt heavier after she left. I called Deborah that night, told her everything. And she said nothing for a long time. Then whispered, "I need space, John, not because I don't care, but because I do. And I don't want to be someone's second choice, even if I was the right one all along." The line went dead. And I was left standing in a room full of trophies, headlines, and silence. Because in winning the war, I may have lost what mattered most. The day I saw Deborah again wasn't planned. There was no invitation, no text, not even a calendar reminder from Ryan, who still micromanaged my world like I might fall apart without it. I had shown up to the hospital for routine blood work, just another checkbox in my annual physical. My heart was fine now. My mind, mostly quiet. But my chest tightened the second I stepped off the elevator. Because Deborah was there. Not in passing, not walking away. She was at the nurse's station, clipboard in hand, glasses perched on the bridge of her nose, explaining something to a junior nurse who was nodding too fast. Her voice, calm, assured, soft, but never hesitant. I hadn't heard it in weeks, not since the call. "I need space, John." She looked the same, but the air around her felt different, like she'd built walls in my absence. I stood still, unsure whether to turn or speak, but she saw me first. Her gaze faltered, just for a second. Then she walked over. "Hey." I nodded. "Hey. I didn't think I'd see you here. Annual checkup." "Ah." She looked down at my file. "Good. You look stable." I smiled faintly. "Physically, yeah." A pause. "I've been meaning to call," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "But?" "I was scared you wouldn't pick up. I was scared you'd say everything I wanted to hear, but not mean it." Her honesty cut deeper than blame. "I didn't choose you because I lost Sophia," I said. "I chose you because I finally saw who stood by me when no one else did. That's not the same as love." "I know." I stepped closer. "But I'm not here to offer half of anything anymore." The tension between us shifted, like a storm gathering over water. Then she surprised me. "Come with me," she said. I followed her down the hallway to an old staff room, unused, dimly lit, chairs stacked along the wall. She sat, I did too. And then she opened her bag and pulled something out. A letter. Handwritten, torn at the edges. She handed it to me. "It's from Sophia," she said. "She sent it last week." I hesitated. "You read it?" "No, I wanted you to." I unfolded the letter slowly, expecting venom, or manipulation, or guilt. But it wasn't any of that. "John. By the time you read this, you'll have likely made up your mind about me. Maybe you already had, maybe you were right to. I spent so much time trying to be perfect, for the world, for my father, for you, that when you finally collapsed, I didn't know how to react to something I couldn't fix by smiling. I left because I was scared. Not just of your pain, but of mine. You asked once if I ever truly loved you. I didn't answer. So here it is. Yes, I did, in my own broken way, but love isn't always enough when pride weighs more. And now I know I didn't just lose you, I lost the only version of myself that was honest. Deborah was always braver than I was. She never needed applause to be whole. That's why you saw her in the end. That's why you chose her. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just the truth. Tell her the one thing I never had the courage to, that you love her. Not because she stayed, but because without her, you wouldn't know what it means to feel safe again. Sophia. I finished reading, my throat was dry, my hands shook, and when I looked up, Deborah wasn't looking at me, she was staring at the floor. "She didn't write that to manipulate you," she said. "I think she meant every word." "I do too." Another pause. "You know the night you walked out of her wedding with me," she whispered. "I thought we were writing a new beginning." "We were." "No, John, you were still in the middle of ending the old one, and I didn't want to be a rebound. I wanted to be chosen. You were. You are." Her eyes met mine finally. "Then say it." I swallowed. "I love you, Deborah." "Why?" "Because you saw me when I was invisible, because you listened when no one else asked questions, because when I collapsed, you didn't run, and because every time I breathe now, without fear, without apology, it's because of you." She exhaled, shaky. "And you're not still haunted by her?" "No," I said. "I'm haunted by who I became for her. And that's not your ghost to carry." She blinked fast, then stood. I stood too. "Where do we go from here?" she asked. I reached for her hand. "We build something real, quiet, solid, no performances, no ghosts, just truth." She nodded once. Then, for the first time in forever, she leaned forward and kissed me, softly, slowly, like she was choosing the moment, not surrendering to it. And when we pulled apart, there was no pain in her eyes. Only peace. It was a quiet morning when the final thread unraveled. Not with screaming, not with a viral moment, just a simple press conference, scheduled quietly, held at the Liu Foundation headquarters. Sophia sat at the front, flanked by 2 PR officers. The media had grown tired of her apologies. This was supposed to be her redemption arc, a speech about resilience, rising from scandal, reclaiming her voice. She wore white again. Of course she did, but what she didn't know was that the foundation board, under new leadership, had made one final change to the agenda. They added a second speaker. Me. I walked in halfway through her opening monologue. The camera shutters snapped instantly. She froze when she saw me. For a split second, her carefully rehearsed poise cracked. Then she smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen, a surprise guest, my ex-fiancé, John, a perfect example of reconciliation." I stepped up beside her, took the mic. "I'm not here to reconcile," I said calmly. "I'm here to return what was stolen." The room went silent. I held up a contract, one I'd drafted months ago but waited for the perfect moment to use. 3 years ago, I funded Sophia's personal branding startup with $2.6 million of my own capital. The paperwork listed me as a silent investor. Reporters started murmuring. Sophia stiffened. "John, what are you doing?" I kept going. What I didn't realize then was that silence often gets repaid in betrayal. I unfolded another page. Last year, without board consent, Sophia restructured the shares to push me out of decision-making power. She called it streamlining, I call it theft. Gasps filled the room, cameras flashed wildly now. I turned to the board members in the room. Today, I'm invoking Clause 17, breach of fiduciary ethics, effective immediately. All brand control returns to original stakeholders, which means, I paused. I now own full creative control over the Sophia Liu brand. She stepped back like I had physically struck her. "You can't." "I just did." Behind her, a screen blinked on. New branding appeared, the Liu legacy, reclaimed by the people, not the persona. And below it, a tagline. "Some flowers don't bloom, they rot for views." The room erupted. Sophia turned to me, her voice broke. "Why now?" I looked her straight in the eyes. Because this was never about vengeance, it was about truth. And the truth is, you left me on the floor like I was nothing. So today, I'm just returning the favor, publicly. She reached for the mic, but security stepped between us. The board chair stood. "Sophia Liu is hereby suspended pending investigation." She screamed, she begged, but no one listened. And just like that, the girl who once watched me collapse on cold marble was now the one left standing alone, trembling in front of flashing lights, with no script left to follow. I walked away, just like she did. But this time, I didn't need to look back. Outside, Deborah was waiting. She wore no makeup, no pretenses. Just a soft gray cardigan, her hair tied back in the same way she had always worn it when we were kids. I stepped up beside her. "You didn't have to come." She looked at me. "I wanted to see you take back what she stole. I wasn't sure you'd approve." "I don't approve," she said. "But I understand, and I know this part had to end before anything new could begin." I nodded, then handed her a small box. Inside was a silver key. She blinked. "What is this?" "A new studio," I said. "Downtown, all yours, for your art, your career, your name." "I didn't ask for this." "I know, that's why you deserve it." She stared at the key for a long moment, then quietly closed the box. "I'm not saying yes yet. I'm not asking for yes, I'm just asking for maybe." And for now, that was enough. Ryan found me later that evening. I was sitting on the same rooftop where Sophia once told me she wanted a future filled with cameras and crowds. "Never thought I'd see you win this big," he said, handing me a bottle of water. "Doesn't feel like a win. Because you still care." "No," I said, "because I've finally stopped caring. And that emptiness, it's strange." Ryan sat beside me. "You did what needed to be done. You gave her the silence she feared most, irrelevance." We sat there in silence for a moment, the city lights below us blinking like soft confessions. Then Ryan asked, "What now?" I looked out toward the skyline. "I start again, with honesty, with less noise, with people who don't need a crowd to love me." He smiled. "Sounds boring. Sounds peaceful." And that was the real victory. Not the headlines, not the takeover, but the quiet, the knowing. Standing tall, without needing anyone to look. 3 months later, Sophia's account vanished from every major platform. Her name faded from press cycles. She moved abroad. Start over, they said. I didn't follow, I didn't check. Because some stories don't need sequels, and some goodbyes don't need closure. But mine? Mine had both. because the day she walked away when I collapsed, she thought I'd never get up again. But I did. And when I finally stood, I made sure she saw who was standing beside me. Deborah, the sister who never left, the love that never needed applause, the beginning I almost missed, and as we walked forward, into something real, something quiet, something strong, I smiled, not because I won, but because I healed.